Welcome, my friend. Take a seat, take a drink, and listen to the tale of the Lady Mole. A lonely life for the dark and silent mole. Day is to her night. She glides along her narrow vaults, unconscious of the glad and glorious scenes of earth and air and sea. She was born, as it were, in a grave, and in one long living sepulchre she dwells and dies. Is not existence to her a kind of doom? Wherefore is she thus a dark, sad exile from the blessed light of day? Hearken. Here, in our bleak old Cornwall, the first mole was once a lady of the land. Her abode was in the far west among the hills of Morwenna, beside the Severn Sea. She was the daughter of a lordly race, the only child of her mother, and the father of the house was dead. Her name was Alice of the Coomb. Fair was she, and comely, tender and tall, and she stood upon the threshold of her youth. But most of all did men marvel at the glory of her large blue eyes. They were, to look upon, like the summer waters when the sea is soft with light. They were to her mother a joy, and to the maiden herself, benedicte, a pride. She trusted in the loveliness of those eyes, and in her face and features and form, and so it was that the damsel was wont to pass a whole summer day in the choice of rich apparel and precious stones and gold. Now, in the fashion of her stateliness, and in the hue and texture of her garments, there was none among the maidens of old Cornwall like Alice of the Coomb. Men sought her far and near, but she was to them all like a form of graven stone, careless and cold. Her soul was set upon a Granville's love, fair Sir Bevil of Stow, the flower of the Cornish chivalry, that noble gentleman, that valorous knight. He was her star. And well might she wait upon his eyes, for he was the garland of the West, the loyal soldier of a Stuart king. He was that stately Granville who lived a hero's life and died a warrior's death. Now, there was a signal made of a banquet in the halls of Stow, of wassail and dance. The messenger had sped, and Alice of the Coomb would be there. Robes precious and many were unfolded from their rest, and the casket poured forth jewel and gem, that the maiden might stand before the knight victorious. It was the day, the hour, the time. Her mother sat at her will by the hearth. The page waited in the hall. She came down in her loveliness into the old oak room, and stood before the mirrored glass. Her robe was of woven velvet, rich and glossy and soft. Jewels shone like stars in the midnight of her raven hair, and on her hand there gleamed afar off a bright and glorious ring. She stood before the mirror, and gazed upon her own fair countenance and form, and worshipped. Now all good angels succour thee, my Alice, and bend Sir Bevil's soul, she spoke to her reflection. Fain am I greet thee wedded wife before I die. I do yearn to hold thy children on my knee. Often shall I pray to-night that the Granville heart may yield. Ay, thy victory shall be thy mother's prayer. Prayer, was the haughty answer. Now, with the eyes that I see in that glass, and with this vesture meet for a queen, I lack no trusting prayer. St. Juliet, shield us! Words of fatal sound. There was a sudden shriek, a sob, a cry, and where was Alice of the Coomb? Vanished, silent, gone. They had heard wild tones of mystic music in the air. There was a rush, a beam of light, and she was gone, and that for ever. East sought they her, and west, in northern parts and south, but she was never more seen in the land. Her mother wept till she had not a tear left. None sought to comfort her, for it was vain. Moons waxed and waned, and the crones by the cottage hearth had whiled away many a shadowy night with tales of Alice of the Coomb. But at the last, As the gardener in the pleasance leaned one day on his spade, he saw among the roses a small round hillock of earth, such as he had never seen before, and upon it something which shone. It was her ring. It was the very jewel she had worn the day she vanished out of sight. They looked earnestly upon it, and they saw within the border, for it was wide, the tracery of certain small fine runes in the ancient Cornish tongue, which said, Berian erd, ein unpaired. Then came the priest of the place of Morwenna, a grey and silent man. He had served long years at his lonely altar, a worn and solitary form. But he had been wise in language in his youth, and men said that he heard and understood voices in the air when spirits speak and glide. He read and he interpreted thus the legend on the ring. The earth must hide both eyes and pride. Now, as on a day he uttered these words, in the pleasance, by the mound, on a sudden there was among the grass a low faint cry. They beheld, and oh, wondrous and strange, there was a small dark creature, clothed in a soft velvet skin, in texture and in hue like the Lady Alice her robe, and they saw, as it groped into the earth, that it moved along without eyes in everlasting night. Then the ancient man wept, for he called to mind many things and saw what they meant, and he showed them how that this was the maiden who had been visited with a doom for her pride. Therefore her rich array had been changed into the skin of a creeping thing, and her large proud eyes were sealed up, and she herself had become the first mole of the hillocks of Cornwall. Ah, woe is me and well a day! That damsel so stately and fair, sweet Lady Alice of the Coomb, should become for a judgment the dark mother of the moles. Now take ye good heed, Cornish maidens, how ye put on vain apparel to win love, and cast down your eyes, all ye damsels of the West, and look meekly on the ground. Be ye ever good and gentle, tender and true, and when ye see your own image in the glass, and ye begin to be lifted up with the loveliness of that shadowy thing, call to mind the maiden of the Vale of Morwenna, her noble eyes and comely countenance, her vesture of price and the glittering ring. Sit ye by the wheel as of old they sat, and when ye draw forth the lengthening wool, sing ye evermore, and say, Berian erd, ein unpaired. And so ends the tale of the Lady Mole. I hope you found it entertaining, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. I thank you for your company, my friend. I hope to sit with you again very soon.